Welcome to the HigherEdJobs Podcast. I'm Andy Hibble, the Chief Operating Officer and one of the co-founders of HigherEdJobs.
And I'm Kelly Sherwin, the Director of Editorial Strategy here at HigherEdJobs. So today we're lucky to have our new marketing manager, Kyla Maldonado.
Kyla's joining us for the playlist edition of the podcast where she gets to add an additional song, or maybe two if we're so lucky, to the playlist.
We've been talking to a few of our team members, asking what inspires them during a job search. And I know, Kyla, you actually just went through a job search and probably have had a lot of mixed feelings through that job search. So we would love to hear kind of what your thoughts are behind the title of the song that you chose and if there's specific meaning and why you chose that song.
Yes, I feel fresh off of the job market. It's a long process, which was a little alarming, I guess, at first, because there is the notion right now that there's tons of jobs out there to be had and you just sign up and you get a job. It's not quite that easy. You are still a resume among hundreds and hundreds of resumes, and not every job is the perfect job or the right fit either. My song, I'll start with that because I think that leads into it. Having the mind space to just trust that it's going to work out and trust that you're going to end up in the right place. So my song is George Michael's Faith, because I just repeated it over and over again. You have to have faith. You just have to have faith. My husband and I were both on the job market at the same time, taking on a relocation, and it was terrifying at times and depressing at times. And each day you just have to keep going through the process, still being true to what you want to do, not just throwing your resume in every single hat. Not every single hat is going to be a good fit. So yeah, faith. And it worked out. I mean, everything just fell into place. I love being on this team and being able to contribute to HigherEdJobs.
I love that you do have such a fresh perspective, and I love that you are echoing some sentiments that we've heard from other guests in having faith and continuing to move forward. And Andy and I have discussed many times that it isn't easy. The job search isn't easy. And as you can say, you just went through it. And I'm sure some days you probably wanted to give up. But I love that you and your husband reminded each other to have faith and keep going. And yeah, it brings you to the point where you're supposed to be. And you said you have to you alluded to being selective and not just throwing your resume out there to every job, but knowing what you want to do and, having faith that it'll work out. And by the way, we are very happy that you're on the team as well.
Delighted.
Oh, thank you. It's been great.
And I will note, as far as the playlist goes to this point, I actually think this is the biggest hit we've chosen. I believe Faith was the number one song the entire year of 1988. It was a huge hit. But it's such sage advice when you're thinking about it, being able to focus a little bit on understanding that this will work out and having the faith that it will helps you kind of focus on what the end goal is, what the destination is, as opposed to feeling every bump in the road that goes along the way. Because if you don't have that faith, when the weather gets bad or the road gets rocky, it can feel like maybe this isn't going the direction you want it to go. And we've all been there. So we're delighted you're here with us. Is there any other advice maybe you'd like to offer up to a job seeker who's out there?
I think remembering, and this goes back to my previous experience, I was in a management role that I was a hiring manager, and putting into perspective that I'm sure that there were a lot of really quality candidates that I never interviewed, because that's just sometimes the way that the resumes fall or the emails come in, or, there's only so much manpower, timing to go through things, and not taking it personally, not doubting your talent or your strengths or what you can bring to a team, and then just going back to that, apply for the next one, find the next one, know that that wasn't the job for you.
I love that advice.
Yeah, I think that's spot on.
Yeah.
And Andy, I have to ask you, please tell me you Googled that fact and you didn't know that was the top song of 1988, because that'd be scary.
So I do believe, I had a sense it was, and I did Google it. So I will admit to that. But also, I was in college at the time, and I'm going to share a little story here. You meet unique people over the years, and I have a good friend who's a wonderful person, but had a unique habit of, back in college in this era, that he would go to the library each and every week and copy down the top 40. And so I was very tuned into the top 40 at this time, because he was very much into writing it down, putting it in his notebook, making note of these things. So I always kind of a sense of it. And actually, fast forward a few years, I was at a used record store, and I never knew this. If you listened to American Top 40 back in the day, kind of always heard Casey Kasem talking about it. But I didn't know that American Top 40 would send a record out of the show. That's how they received it. Well, that makes perfect sense, but didn't really think about it that way. But I found from that era a record of an American Top 40 show of the top 40 of that week, and found it and gave it to him. And it's probably the best $6 present I've ever given anybody in my entire life. So I'd like to take some credit that had a sense of that. I'm like, that's a big hit. That's a big hit. I didn't have the time to Google that. That's probably a top 10 hit of the 80s sort of big hit. So yeah, I was pretty impressed, and just a great choice. So thank you for sharing. And now I challenge anybody listening to the podcast, when you go over to the Spotify playlist, please go over to Spotify. If you don't have the playlist, add it to your library. I challenge you to get that song out of your head for the rest of the day.
Right.
And if you're younger, if you haven't seen the video, watch the video. Try to get the video out of your head too. It was a catchy video as well.
Look at Mike's face.
Yeah. We're all Gen Xers here, so
I feel like there's a documentary coming out on him, or maybe it just came out. I
don't know. I don't know.
Anyway, we're digressing from your song and your inspiration.
The next Google search.
So,
exactly.
Yes. So I think we now have a glimpse into where the idea of this playlist came from, and Andy's unbelievable love for. And I'm not making fun of you at this. Like, you truly do have an unbelievable love for music. So.
And my friend Howard, I can say this, I have an unbelievable love. I don't necessarily have that same mind. Maybe we should do an episode where we just try to stump Howard of top 40 hits of the 80s, because it may not have anything to do with job search, but if you need a distraction to just see somebody who has that sort of encyclopedic mind on this information, it's actually kind of cool. So thank you so much, Kyla, for joining us today and being willing,
for having me.
Even knowing what we're up to coming on the playlist edition of the podcast.
Thank you, Kyla.
Happy to be here.
Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next time.
And remember, keep your feet on the ground and keep reaching for the stars.
Thanks, Mike.
Is that Casey Kasem?
That is Casey Kasem.
From the show. I was a big listener too.
That record was so cool, and it actually had